The blood on Prudence Jensen's hands had been scrubbed away 3 times, but she could still feel it there, sticky and warm against her palms as she gripped the reins of the stolen horse beneath her. The August sun beat down mercilessly on the Colorado plains in 1878, and she had been riding for 2 days straight with nothing but fear and the clothes on her back, fleeing from a man who had taught her that she was worth less than the dirt under his boots. She had killed him. Not intentionally, but when Marcus Webb had raised his fist for the 1,000th time, something inside her had finally broken free. The cast iron skillet had connected with his temple before she even realized she had picked it up. He had crumpled to the floor of their Denver boarding house, and she had not waited to see if he would get back up. She grabbed what little money he kept hidden, took his horse, and rode out into the vast wilderness without a plan or destination. The mountains rose before her now, jagged peaks that seemed to touch the sky itself. She had heard of a town called Aspen nestled somewhere in those mountains, a mining settlement where people asked few questions and kept to themselves. It seemed as good a place as any to disappear, assuming she made it there before the horse collapsed beneath her, or she died of thirst. The animal stumbled, and Prudence felt panic seize her chest. She had no experience with horses, no knowledge of how to care for them properly. Marcus had kept her locked away, useful only for cooking and cleaning and absorbing his rage when the world disappointed him. She was 22 years old and knew almost nothing about survival. "Please," she whispered to the horse, her voice cracking, "just a little farther." But the horse's legs buckled, and suddenly she was tumbling forward, hitting the hard ground with a force that knocked the air from her lungs. She lay there gasping, staring up at the brilliant blue sky, wondering if this was how it would end. Maybe it was better this way. No one would miss her. No one had ever told her she mattered anyway. She heard footsteps approaching, heavy boots on rocky soil. Terror flooded through her, and she scrambled backward, her hands searching for something, anything to defend herself with. A shadow fell across her, blocking out the sun, and she looked up to see a man unlike any she had ever encountered. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to fill her entire field of vision. His arms were thick with muscle, visible beneath the rolled sleeves of his worn flannel shirt. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, tied back loosely with a piece of leather cord, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But it was his eyes that stopped her, cold, deep brown eyes that held no anger, no threat, only a cautious concern that seemed entirely foreign to her. "You hurt." His voice was low and rough, like gravel shifting in a stream. Prudence could not speak. She pressed herself against the ground, waiting for violence that did not come. The man crouched down slowly, keeping his distance. "I am not going to hurt you," he said carefully, "but that horse is in bad shape. Needs water and rest. You do too, by the look of it." She found her voice thin and wavering. "I have to keep going." "Where are you headed?" "Aspen," he nodded, glancing at the exhausted horse. "You are about 15 miles out. Horse will not make it that far today. My cabin is 2 miles north. You can rest there, and I will take you to Aspen in the morning." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to run, to never trust a man again. But her body was broken, her resources exhausted, and something in his steady gaze made her hesitate. "Why would you help me?" she asked suspiciously. He stood up, offering his hand. She stared at it like it might be a trap. "Name is Isaac Brennan. I live alone up in these mountains, trap and hunt mostly. Do not see many people, and when I do, I help if I can. That is all." Prudence did not take his hand, but she managed to stand on her own. Her legs shook beneath her, threatening to give out. Isaac whistled sharply, and a massive black horse emerged from behind a cluster of pine trees. He walked over to her exhausted mount and examined it with practiced hands. "This horse has been ridden hard," he said, disapproval clear in his tone. "But it will survive, needs care though." "I did not know," Prudence said defensively. "I am not a horse thief by nature." Isaac looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt exposed under that gaze. She knew what he must see: a thin woman with hollowed cheeks, bruises fading to yellow on her arms, tangled blonde hair, and eyes that held too much fear. "I am not judging you," he said quietly. "Come on, let us get you somewhere safe." That word safe nearly broke her. She had not felt safe in 3 years, not since the day she had foolishly believed Marcus Webb's promises of a better life in Denver. She had been a naive 19-year-old orphan from St. Louis with no family and no prospects. He had seemed like salvation. Instead, he had been her personal hell. Isaac led both horses, walking at a pace slow enough for her to keep up. She followed behind, keeping distance between them, studying him warily. He moved with the easy confidence of someone completely at home in the wilderness. His buckskin pants were worn but well-maintained, his boots solid and practical. A rifle hung across his back, and she could see the handle of a large knife at his belt. The walk took longer than she expected because her body kept threatening to shut down. Isaac never complained, never pushed her faster. When she stumbled, he paused and waited. He did not try to help her up or touch her. It was as if he understood that touch itself was a threat to her. Finally, they emerged into a small clearing where a log cabin stood beneath the shelter of enormous pine trees. It was larger than she expected, well built with a stone chimney and a small porch. A creek ran nearby, the sound of rushing water immediately soothing. Behind the cabin, she could see a barn and a fenced area. "Wait here," Isaac said, leading the horses toward the barn. She stood uncertainly in the clearing, calculating her chances of running versus the reality that she would likely die if she did. He returned without the horses and gestured toward the cabin. "You can wash up if you like. There is a pump out back. I will make some food." The cabin's interior surprised her. It was clean and organized with handmade furniture that showed real craftsmanship. Shelves lined one wall, filled with books. Books. Marcus had never owned a single book, had mocked her when she tried to read the newspaper. Isaac moved to the fireplace and began preparing a meal with efficient movements. Prudence stood frozen near the door, unsure what to do with herself. "Pump is out back," he reminded her gently. "Towels are on the shelf there. Take your time." She grabbed a towel and went outside, finding the water pump beside the creek. The cold mountain water felt like a blessing as she washed away days of grime and sweat. She scrubbed her face and arms, wishing she could wash away the memories as easily. When she returned, Isaac had set out a simple meal: venison, beans, and fresh bread. The smell made her stomach clench with hunger. He gestured to the table and sat down across from her, but at the far end, giving her space. They ate in silence. Prudence could not remember the last time she had eaten without fear, without waiting for a hand to strike her or a plate to be thrown. She kept glancing up at Isaac, waiting for his mood to shift, for the kindness to reveal itself as a mask. But he simply ate his meal, his movements calm and unhurried. "You can sleep in here tonight," he said finally. "I will sleep in the barn." "This is your home," she protested automatically. "And you are a guest who needs rest and safety. I have slept in that barn plenty of times. It is comfortable enough." Prudence wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight. She nodded mutely. Isaac stood and gathered some blankets from a chest. He set them on the bed in the corner, the only bed in the single-room cabin. "Bar the door after I leave if it makes you feel better," he said. "I will not try to come in." He left before she could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. Prudence sat there for a long moment, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again, for the trap to spring. But it did not. She heard his footsteps moving away toward the barn, heard the creak of that door opening and closing. Slowly, she walked to the cabin door and slid the heavy wooden bar into place. Then she collapsed onto the bed, and for the first time in years, she cried herself to sleep knowing that no one would strike her for the weakness of tears. Morning light streamed through the cabin window, and Prudence woke with a start, momentarily disoriented. Then memory came flooding back: the escape, the fall, the mountain man. She sat up quickly, her body protesting with aches from yesterday's ordeal. A knock on the door made her jump. "Morning," Isaac's voice came from outside. "I have fresh water heating if you want coffee." She unbarred the door and opened it cautiously. Isaac stood on the porch with an armful of firewood. In the daylight, she could see him more clearly. He was younger than she had first thought, maybe 30 at most. His face was weathered from years in the mountains, but there was a gentleness to his features that seemed at odds with his imposing size. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Better than I have in years," she admitted before she could stop herself. Something flickered in his expression, understanding, maybe, or sadness. He brought the firewood inside and built up the fire. "Coffee will be ready soon. Then I can take you to Aspen if you still want to go." Prudence watched him work, noting how careful he was to keep distance between them, how he never made sudden movements. "Have you lived here long?" "5 years. Came out from Missouri after the war. Too many people there, too much noise. Found peace up here in the mountains. It must be lonely." He shrugged those massive shoulders. "Lonely is not the same as alone. I like the quiet. Animals do not lie or hurt each other for sport." She heard the story beneath those words, the same kind of pain that lived in her own bones. They were both refugees in their own ways. Isaac made coffee in a battered pot over the fire, and the smell filled the cabin. He handed her a tin cup, and she wrapped her hands around it, savoring the warmth. "I killed a man," she said suddenly, the words escaping before she could trap them. 2 days ago. He was my husband, and I killed him." Isaac sipped his coffee, his expression unchanged. Did he deserve it? The question surprised her. No judgment, no condemnation, just a simple question. "Yes," she whispered. "He hurt me. For 3 years he hurt me, and I could not take it anymore." "Then you did what you had to do to survive." Isaac set down his cup and looked at her directly. "I am not a lawman, Prudence. I do not know what happened in Denver, and I do not need to know. But I know what fear looks like, and I know what it means when someone runs. Whatever you are running from, it is not going to find you here if you do not want it to. You do not even know me. I know enough. I know you are trying to survive. That is all anyone is doing out here." Something in his calm acceptance made her want to weep again. "Why do you care?" Isaac stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains. "I had a sister once, younger than me. She married a man who hurt her, and I was too far away to help. By the time I came home from the war, she was already gone. Died in childbirth, but I always wondered if it was really the birth that killed her or all the years of pain before it." "I am sorry," Prudence said softly. He turned back to her. "So when I see someone running, someone afraid, I help, because I could not help her." They finished their coffee in companionable silence. Isaac packed some supplies and they prepared for the ride to Aspen. But as Prudence stood on the porch, looking at the peaceful clearing, something made her hesitate. "What if I stayed?" she asked suddenly. "Just for a few days. Until I figure out what to do next." Isaac studied her for a long moment. "You can stay as long as you need, but I need you to know I am not like whoever hurt you. I will not touch you, will not force anything. You are safe here. I give you my word." "Why should I trust your word?" "Because it is all I have to offer. That and time to prove it. Prudence considered this. She had nowhere else to go, no other options, and something about this quiet mountain man made her want to believe that safety might actually exist. "All right," she said. "A few days." Those few days turned into a week. Isaac went about his routines, checking his traps, hunting, maintaining the property, and he treated Prudence like a skittish animal that needed time to trust. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply existed in the space, solid and steady. She watched him chop wood one afternoon, fascinated by the play of muscles beneath his shirt as the axe rose and fell with perfect precision. He worked with a rhythm born of years of practice, and there was something almost meditative about it. "You are staring," he called out without looking at her. She flushed. "I have never seen someone work like that. Marcus never—" She stopped. Isaac paused and turned to her. "Marcus never what?" "He never did physical work. He gambled and drank and lived off money he swindled from others. I did not realize that until after we married." "Sounds like a real prize." Despite herself, Prudence laughed. It was a rusty sound, unpracticed. "That is one way to put it." Isaac smiled, a small expression that softened his whole face. "You should laugh more, suits you." Over the next few weeks, Prudence found herself settling into a routine. She helped with cooking and mending, skills Marcus had demanded but never appreciated. Isaac thanked her for every meal, complimented her abilities, treated her contributions as valuable. It was such a foreign experience that she did not know how to process it at first. One morning, she woke to find Isaac already up, sitting on the porch with his coffee. She had grown comfortable enough to sleep without barring the door, trusting that he would keep his word about sleeping in the barn. She poured herself coffee and joined him outside. The September air was crisp, carrying the promise of autumn. "The leaves are starting to turn," she observed. "Another few weeks and these mountains will be covered in gold," Isaac said. "Most beautiful time of year up here. Will you go to Aspen before winter? Usually make one trip for supplies." "Why?" "I was thinking I should probably go, find work, make a life." The words felt hollow even as she said them. Isaac was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you want?" "I do not know what I want," she admitted. "I have never been allowed to want anything." He set down his cup and turned to look at her. "You matter, Prudence. What you want, what you need, it matters. Maybe nobody ever told you that before, but it is true." The words hit her like a physical blow. She felt tears spring to her eyes. "Do not say things like that." "Why not? It is the truth." "Because," her voice broke. "Because if I believe it and then you turn out to be like him, it will destroy me." Isaac's expression grew fierce. "I am nothing like him. I will prove it every day if I have to. You want to leave, I will take you to Aspen and make sure you are set up safe. You want to stay, you stay. This is your choice. Yours. Nobody else gets to decide for you anymore." Prudence covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. She felt Isaac's presence beside her, solid and warm, but he did not touch her. He just sat there, a steady anchor while she fell apart. "I want to stay," she whispered finally, "but I am afraid. Fear is smart. Fear kept you alive, but do not let it be the only thing that guides you. You are stronger than you know." She lowered her hands and looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had taken in a stranger, who had given her safety without asking for anything in return, who had treated her with more respect in a month than Marcus had in 3 years. "How are you real?" she asked. "I am just a man, Prudence. Nothing special. But I was raised to believe that how you treat people matters. That strength is not about forcing your will on others, but about protecting those who need it. My father was a good man, taught me what it means to be decent. I try to live up to that. I think you do more than try." Something shifted between them in that moment, a wall coming down. Over the following weeks, they grew closer. Isaac taught her to ride properly. his large hands patient as he showed her how to hold the reins, how to communicate with the horse. He taught her to shoot, standing behind her to guide her aim but always asking permission before he touched her, no matter how briefly. "You are a natural," he said after she hit the target 3 times in a row. "I am motivated to never be helpless again," she replied. "You were never helpless. You survived. That took strength." These small affirmations became part of their daily routine. Isaac seemed to understand that she needed to hear them, needed to rebuild a sense of self that had been systematically destroyed. Every morning when she woke, he was there with coffee and a smile and some small reminder that she mattered, that her thoughts, her feelings, her presence had value. October arrived with golden aspens and cold nights. Isaac began sleeping on the floor in the cabin rather than in the barn, the weather growing too harsh. Prudence felt guilty about taking his bed, but he refused to discuss alternatives. "You are still healing," he said firmly. "You need proper rest." One night she woke from a nightmare, gasping for air. In the dream, Marcus had been alive, chasing her through endless corridors. She sat up in bed, her heart racing. "Prudence!" Isaac's voice came from the darkness. She heard him sit up from his bedroll by the fire. "You all right?" "Just a dream," she managed. "Want to talk about it?" She did not answer right away, but then found herself speaking. "I dreamed that I did not kill him, that he is coming for me, that he will find me and drag me back." Isaac was quiet for a moment. "He cannot hurt you anymore. And even if he could, he would have to go through me first. I promise you that." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her feel something she had not felt in years, safe, truly safe. "Isaac?" "Yeah, would you?" She hesitated, afraid to ask. "Could you sit closer?" "Just so I know you are there." She heard him stand, and then his large form settled into the chair beside the bed. "I am right here. Go back to sleep. I will keep watch." She did sleep, better than she had in weeks, comforted by his steady presence. The first snow came in early November, dusting the mountains with white. Prudence stood on the porch, watching the flakes fall, and felt Isaac come up behind her. He had learned her boundaries, knew now that he could stand close without frightening her. "Beautiful, is it not?" he murmured. "Yes," she agreed. Then, gathering her courage, she added, "I have been here 3 months now, I know. I should probably pay you back somehow for your hospitality." Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "You do not owe me anything, Prudence. Having you here, it has been good. The cabin feels less empty. I feel less empty." She turned to look up at him, surprised by the admission. His dark eyes met hers, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not lust or demand, but something softer, something that looked like hope. "Isaac," she said softly, "I think I am falling in love with you." His eyes widened. "You do not have to say that. You do not owe me. I am not saying it because I owe you anything. I am saying it because it is true. You have been kinder to me than anyone in my entire life. You have made me feel like I matter, like my existence has value. Every morning I wake up and you are there, reminding me through your actions that I am worth something. How could I not fall in love with you?" Isaac's hand came up slowly, giving her time to move away, and gently cupped her cheek. His palm was rough from work but infinitely gentle. "I have been in love with you for weeks," he confessed, "but I did not want to pressure you, did not want you to feel obligated. You never pressure me. That is why I love you." He leaned down slowly, telegraphing his intention, giving her every opportunity to refuse. But Prudence rose on her toes to meet him halfway, and their lips met in a kiss that was soft and searching and full of promise. It was nothing like the brutal, demanding kisses Marcus had forced on her. This was a question and an answer, a beginning rather than a taking. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you matter," he said. every single day. "I believe you," she whispered, and realized it was true. For the first time in her adult life, she trusted completely. Winter settled into the mountains with serious intent. Snow piled high around the cabin, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud from Isaac's collection of books, talking about their pasts and their hopes for the future. "You want children someday?" Prudence asked one night. Isaac considered the question seriously. "I do, but only if you do. Only if you feel ready for that. There is no rush, we have time." "I was afraid to bring children into my marriage with Marcus," she admitted. "Afraid of what he might do to them. But with you, I can imagine it. I can imagine a family." He pulled her close, and she nestled against his broad chest, marveling at how safe she felt in his arms. They had been sharing the bed for a few weeks now, a progression that had happened naturally as trust deepened. Isaac never pushed for more than she was ready to give, content to hold her through the night and wake beside her each morning. Christmas came, and Isaac surprised her by carving a beautiful wooden bird, delicate and detailed. "I know it is not much," he said, almost shy. "But I noticed you watching the birds outside." "It is perfect," she said, tears in her eyes. "I did not get you anything. You gave me everything when you decided to stay. That is gift enough." On New Year's Eve, as 1879 approached, Isaac built up the fire and pulled out a bottle of whiskey he had been saving. They toasted the new year together, and then he took both her hands in his. "Prudence Jensen," he said solemnly. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know you have every reason to be cautious about marriage. But I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. Would you consider becoming my wife? Not because you need protection or shelter, but because we choose each other. Because we want to build a life together." Prudence felt joy burst through her chest like sunlight. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Isaac Brennan, I will marry you." They made the trip to Aspen in January during a break in the weather. The town had grown considerably since the silver boom, full of miners and merchants and all the chaos of a frontier settlement. Isaac kept Prudence close as they navigated the crowded streets, his protective instincts on high alert. They found a circuit preacher who agreed to marry them. The ceremony was simple, held in a small church with a few curious townspeople as witnesses. Prudence wore a new dress Isaac had insisted on buying her, deep blue that matched her eyes. Isaac had trimmed his beard and hair, though he still looked like the mountain man he was, tall and broad and undeniably masculine. "Do you, Isaac Brennan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the preacher asked. "I do," Isaac said, his voice steady and sure. "And do you, Prudence Jensen, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Prudence looked up at Isaac, at this man who had shown her what love actually meant, and smiled. "I do." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. They were married. She was Prudence Brennan now, starting fresh, starting new. They spent one night at Aspen's hotel before heading back to the mountains. In the privacy of their room, their marriage was consummated with a gentleness and care that Prudence had not known was possible. Isaac treated her like something precious, checking in with her constantly, making sure she was comfortable, putting her pleasure before his own. Afterward, as they lay tangled together beneath the quilts, Prudence cried. But these were tears of joy, of release, of finally understanding that intimacy did not have to be painful or frightening. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Isaac murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "My wife, my beautiful, strong, brave wife." They returned to the mountain cabin as husband and wife, and life took on a new rhythm. Prudence had never been so happy. She woke each morning beside Isaac, and he always greeted her with a kiss and a reminder of her worth. "Good morning, beautiful," he would say. Another day to spend with the woman who changed my life. Spring came, melting the snow and revealing new growth. Prudence discovered she was pregnant in April, and Isaac's joy was boundless. He became even more protective, if that was possible, hovering over her like a devoted bear. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she laughed as he rushed to help her with a simple task. "I know, but you are carrying something precious. Let me help." Their son was born in December of 1879, delivered with the help of a midwife from Aspen who Isaac had convinced to make the journey. The labor was hard, and there were moments when Prudence was terrified, but Isaac never left her side. He held her hand, whispered encouragement, and when their baby finally arrived, he wept openly. "A boy," the midwife announced, placing the squalling infant in Prudence's arms. "Look at him," Prudence breathed, awed. "He is perfect." Isaac touched his son's tiny hand with one large finger, his expression full of wonder. "He is, just like his mother." They named him Thomas after Isaac's father. Baby Thomas was healthy and loud with an appetite that kept Prudence busy. Isaac was a devoted father, taking on every task without complaint. He would walk the floor with Thomas for hours when the baby was fussy, singing old songs in his rumbling voice until Thomas finally settled. "You are so good with him," Prudence said one night, watching her husband cradle their son. "I had a good example. My father taught me that being a man means showing up, doing the work, loving your family with everything you have. That is what I want to give Thomas, and you." The years passed in a blur of happiness. They had a daughter in 1882, whom they named Sarah, and another son in 1884, whom they called James. The cabin was full of noise and life and love. Isaac expanded the cabin to make more room, building on an additional bedroom with his own hands. Prudence threw herself into motherhood and partnership with equal passion. She kept the home running smoothly, tended a large garden in the summers, and helped Isaac with his trapping and hunting. They were partners in every sense, each respecting the other's strengths and supporting their weaknesses. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy with his father's build and his mother's determination. Sarah was quick-witted and fearless, always exploring despite her mother's warnings. James was the quiet one, thoughtful and observant, content to sit with his father and learn. One morning in the spring of 1886, Prudence woke early to find Isaac already awake, watching her with a soft expression. She smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "About how lucky I am. How different my life could have been if you had not stumbled into it." She reached up to touch his bearded face. "I am the lucky one. You saved me, Isaac, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," he corrected. "You gave me purpose, gave me a family. You made this cabin a home." The children woke, as they always did, too early, and the peace of morning shattered into the chaos of family life. But it was a beautiful chaos, full of laughter and love. They ate breakfast together, a rambunctious affair with Thomas telling stories about the rabbit he had seen, and Sarah demanding to know when she could learn to shoot like her mother. After the children were settled with their tasks, Prudence and Isaac stole a moment on the porch. It had become their tradition, these stolen moments of peace where they could just be together. "I was thinking," Isaac said, "maybe we should make a trip to Aspen soon. Let the children see the town, pick up some supplies, maybe even stay a few days." "That sounds wonderful," Prudence agreed. Thomas has been asking about the world beyond the mountains. They made the trip in June, when the weather was fine and the aspens were full and green. Aspen had continued to grow, now a proper town with hotels, saloons, shops, and even a school. The children were wide-eyed at all the people and buildings. They stayed at the hotel where Prudence and Isaac had spent their wedding night, and Isaac made a point of taking his family to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. As they sat together, their children clean and well-behaved, Prudence felt a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. "You all right?" Isaac asked, noticing her emotion. "More than all right," she said. "I was just thinking about the woman I was 8 years ago. Desperate, terrified, convinced she had no value, and now look at me, look at us, look at what we have built." Isaac reached across the table and took her hand. "You always had value, you just needed someone to help you see it. You remind me every day," she said softly. "Every single morning when I wake beside you, you remind me that I matter, that I am loved. That is the greatest gift anyone could give." That night, after the children were asleep in their hotel room and she and Isaac lay together in the darkness, Prudence felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. This was her life now. Not running, not hiding, not surviving. Living. Truly living, surrounded by love and security and a future full of promise. "Isaac," she whispered. Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For loving me when I thought I was unlovable. For building this life with me." He pulled her closer, his strong arms a shelter she would never take for granted. "It is me who should be thanking you. You are my heart, Prudence. You and our children, you are everything." She kissed him, deep and full of promise, and they made love with the quiet passion of two people who had learned to cherish what they had. Afterward, as she drifted toward sleep, Prudence thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the fear, the desperate flight into the mountains. If someone had told that terrified woman on the stolen horse that she would find love, safety, family, and purpose, she would not have believed them. But Isaac had taught her to believe in good things again. He had shown her, through patient consistency and unwavering devotion, that she was worthy of love, that her existence mattered, that she had value simply by being herself. They returned to the cabin after a week in Aspen, and life resumed its familiar rhythms. Summer passed into fall, fall into winter. The children grew and changed, each developing their own personalities and dreams. Thomas wanted to be a trapper like his father. Sarah announced she wanted to be a doctor, having heard about a woman physician in Denver. James said he wanted to write books, to capture the beauty of the mountains in words. Isaac supported each dream without reservation. "You can be anything you want," he told them. "Anything you are willing to work for, and your mother and I will help you get there." Prudence watched her husband with their children and fell in love with him all over again. He was not perfect, he could be stubborn, and his protectiveness sometimes bordered on overprotective. But he was good. Fundamentally, essentially good. He loved with his whole heart and never made her doubt her place in his life. One evening in the fall of 1887, after the children were in bed, Isaac and Prudence sat by the fire with cups of tea. The cabin was quiet, peaceful, full of the contentment that comes from a day well lived. "Do you ever regret it?" Prudence asked suddenly. "Taking me in that day, your life could have been simpler." Isaac looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Regret you? Prudence, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me a reason to be more than just a man hiding in the mountains. You gave me a family, a purpose, a future. How could I ever regret that? I just want to make sure you are happy, that this is enough for you." He set down his tea and pulled her into his lap, something she now welcomed rather than feared. "Listen to me," he said firmly, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "I wake up every morning beside the woman I love. I have 3 healthy, smart, beautiful children. I have a home full of laughter and love. I have everything I could ever want. You are not just enough, you are everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Even after all these years, his words still had the power to move her. "I love you so much. I love you too. And I am going to keep reminding you of that every single day for the rest of our lives." He did. As the years passed and their children grew, Isaac never stopped showing Prudence that she mattered. He brought her wildflowers in the summer and kept the fire burning hot in the winter. He listened when she talked, valued her opinions, supported her decisions. He was a partner in every sense of the word. Thomas left home at 18 to work with a trapping outfit farther north, promising to return regularly. Sarah, determined and brilliant, convinced her parents to let her go to Denver to pursue her dream of medicine. It was hard to let her go, but Isaac and Prudence had raised their children to be independent and strong. James stayed closer to home, apprenticing with the newspaper in Aspen while working on his own writing. The cabin felt emptier without the children's constant presence, but Isaac and Prudence found joy in having time to themselves again. They took long walks through the mountains, revisited places that had meaning in their courtship, and rediscovered each other in the quiet spaces. One morning in the spring of 1895, Prudence woke to find Isaac watching her again, that same soft expression on his face he had worn 17 years ago. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, as he had every morning since they met. "Good morning, my love," she replied, reaching for him. "You know what today is?" he asked. She thought about it. "The anniversary of the day we met, exactly. 17 years ago you fell off that horse and into my life. Best thing that ever happened to me." Prudence laughed, the sound easy and free. "I did not exactly plan it that way. The best things in life are not planned. They just happen, and then you hold on tight and do not let go." She kissed him, still amazed that she could do so freely without fear or hesitation. "I am never letting go." "Good, because I am not letting go either." They spent the day together, just the two of them, walking through the spring wilderness and remembering all the moments that had brought them to this point. They visited the spot where they had first met, the clearing where the cabin stood, the creek where Prudence had washed away her fear all those years ago. "I was so scared," she said, standing by the creek. "I thought I was going to die out here. Instead, you lived, really lived." "Because of you." Isaac shook his head. "Because of you. You made the choice to survive, you made the choice to stay, you made the choice to love. I just provided the space for you to make those choices. You did more than that. You saw me, Isaac. When I was invisible to the world, you saw me. You made me believe I mattered." He pulled her close, and they stood there by the rushing water, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of pain. As they walked back to the cabin in the fading light, Prudence thought about the woman she had been broken, terrified, convinced she had no value. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the pain that had driven her into the mountains, the chance encounter that had changed everything. And she thought about what she had now. A husband who loved her without conditions, children who were making their own way in the world, a home filled with memories and love, a life that mattered. That night, as they lay in bed, Isaac pulled her close and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You matter, Prudence Brennan," he whispered. "You have always mattered, and I will remind you of that every day for as long as we both live." "I know," she whispered back. "I finally know." The years continued to unfold with a gentleness that still sometimes surprised Prudence. In 1897, Thomas returned home with a wife of his own, a strong young woman named Catherine who had been raised in the mountains and was not afraid of hard work. They built a cabin nearby, and the family circle expanded once more. Sarah wrote regularly from Denver, where she was excelling in her medical studies, despite the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated field. "You taught me to be strong," she wrote to her mother. You taught me that my dreams matter. I carry that with me every day. Prudence cried when she read that letter, grateful that her daughter would never have to learn the hard lessons she had learned. Sarah would grow up knowing her worth, confident in her abilities, supported by parents who believed in her. James published his first story in a national magazine in 1898, a beautiful piece about life in the Colorado mountains. Isaac bought every copy the Aspen Mercantile had in stock, proudly showing them to anyone who would look. "That is my boy," he said, beaming, "talented like his mother." "He gets his way with words from you," Prudence countered. "You always know exactly what to say to make me feel loved." "That is because I practice every day." In 1899, Thomas and Catherine had a baby girl, making Isaac and Prudence grandparents. They named her Prudence after her grandmother, and when Prudence held the tiny infant for the first time, she was overcome with emotion. "She is beautiful," she breathed. "Like her grandmother," Isaac said, standing beside her with his arm around her waist. Little Prudence grew, and soon after came a grandson from Thomas and Catherine, then another grandchild from Sarah, who had married a fellow physician and started a family of her own. The cabin became a gathering place for the expanding family, full of noise and chaos and joy during holidays and summers. On Christmas of 1900, as the new century dawned, the entire family gathered at the mountain cabin. 3 generations crowded into the expanded space, filling it with laughter and love. Prudence looked around at the faces of her children and grandchildren, at Thomas, who had Isaac's build and strength, at Sarah, who had her determination and fire, at James, who had inherited both their love of beauty. Isaac found her standing on the porch, watching the snow fall. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and pulled her against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" "About how far we have come, about how different this is from what I thought my life would be. Better or worse." She turned to look up at him, at this man who had saved her in every way possible, who had loved her consistently and completely for more than 20 years. "Better. 1,000 times better. You gave me a life worth living, Isaac. You gave me a family. You gave me myself." He kissed her, deep and sweet, and she melted into him as she had 1,000 times before. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "You gave me the same," he murmured. "Before you, I was just existing. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. You are my everything, Prudence." They stood there together as the snow fell around them, 2 people who had found each other in the wilderness and built something extraordinary. Behind them, through the cabin windows, they could see their family gathered around the fire, the legacy of their love. As the years continued to pass, Isaac and Prudence settled into a comfortable rhythm. Their children were grown and building their own lives, but they returned often, bringing grandchildren who filled the cabin with energy and noise. The mountain home became a touchstone for the whole family, a place where everyone knew they were loved and valued. Isaac aged gracefully, his dark hair turning silver but his strength remaining. He still chopped wood with the same powerful strokes, still hunted and trapped, though he had taught Thomas to take over much of that work. Prudence's blonde hair went white, but her spirit remained undimmed. She was respected throughout the region as a woman of strength and wisdom, someone others turned to for advice. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary in 1904, and their children threw them a party that brought half of Aspen up to the mountain cabin. There was food and music and dancing, and Isaac swept Prudence around the porch under the stars like they were young again. 25 years, she marveled. It feels like yesterday and forever all at once. Best 25 years of my life, Isaac said, and I look forward to 25 more. At least, she agreed, laughing, but life, they both knew, was not infinite. In the winter of 1907, Isaac caught pneumonia. Prudence nursed him with desperate intensity, drawing on every skill she had learned over the years. Their children gathered, worried and frightened. For weeks, Isaac hovered between life and death. Prudence sat beside his bed, holding his hand, willing him to fight. "Do not leave me," she whispered. "Please, Isaac, I need you. I still need you." His fever finally broke on a cold January morning. He opened his eyes, weak but alive, and found Prudence slumped in the chair beside him, exhausted from her vigil. "Prudence," he rasped. She jerked awake, tears immediately flooding her eyes. "Isaac, oh thank God. You look terrible," he said with a weak smile. She laughed through her tears. "You almost died. I was terrified." He squeezed her hand with what strength he had. "Takes more than pneumonia to keep me from you. I promised you a lifetime, and I intend to deliver." He recovered slowly, regaining his strength over the following months. The illness aged him, though, and both of them felt the weight of mortality more keenly. They talked about things they had avoided before, what would happen when one of them died, how to make sure the survivor would be all right. "When I go," Isaac said one evening, "I want you to know that you made my life complete. I could not have asked for a better partner, a better love, a better life." "Do not talk like that," Prudence said, though she knew the conversation was necessary. "But if you go first, know that you gave me everything. You saved me, loved me, showed me what it means to matter. I will carry that until my last breath. And if you go first," Isaac continued, "I will grieve, but I will survive because you taught me how. You taught me that love makes us stronger, not weaker." They held each other, two people facing the reality that even the greatest love stories eventually end, but they had more years together still. Years of watching grandchildren grow, of quiet mornings on the porch, of walks through the mountains they both loved. They celebrated their 30th anniversary in 1909, their 35th in 1914. World wars raged in distant places, but in their mountain sanctuary, peace reigned. Thomas took over more of the property maintenance, insisting his parents rest more. "You have earned it," he said. "Let me take care of things now." Sarah became a renowned physician in Denver, pioneering work in women's health. James published a book about the Colorado mountains that became a bestseller, dedicating it to his parents, who had taught him to see beauty in the wilderness. In the spring of 1918, as Prudence turned 61 and Isaac approached 64, they took a walk to the creek where they had spent so many important moments. The aspens were just beginning to bud, promising the golden autumn to come. "You remember the first time you brought me here?" Prudence asked. "I remember everything about that day. You were so frightened, so broken, and so brave." "I did not feel brave. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. You did that every day." They sat by the rushing water, holding hands, comfortable in the silence that only decades of love can create. Prudence thought about all the mornings she had woken beside this man, all the times he had reminded her that she mattered. It had become so ingrained in her sense of self that she sometimes forgot how revolutionary it had been in the beginning. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too. Always have, always will." That summer they celebrated their grandson's wedding at the mountain cabin. The next generation was coming of age, building their own families, carrying forward the legacy of love and strength that Isaac and Prudence had established. As Isaac watched his descendants, he felt a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what mattered, not wealth or fame or power, but family, love, connection. He looked at Prudence, who was laughing at something one of the grandchildren had said, and felt his heart swell with love so intense it was almost painful. She caught him staring and smiled. Even after 40 years, that smile still had the power to make his heart race. She came over and slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how grateful I am for all of this. For you." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. They stood like that as the party continued around them, two people who had built a beautiful life from broken pieces. As autumn arrived and painted the mountains gold, Isaac and Prudence spent their days much as they always had together. They walked when the weather was good, sat by the fire when it was not. They read to each other, talked for hours, and simply enjoyed the comfort of being together. One October morning, Prudence woke to find Isaac already awake, watching her with that same expression he had worn for 40 years. "Good morning, beautiful," he said softly. "Good morning, my love," she replied, smiling. "You know what you gave me?" he asked suddenly. "What? Purpose. Meaning. A reason to be more than just a man surviving in the wilderness. You gave me a family, a legacy, a life worth living. And every morning I wake up beside you, I am reminded of how blessed I am." Prudence felt tears prick her eyes. "You gave me the same. You showed me I mattered when I thought I was worthless. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You built this life with me. I could not have asked for more." He kissed her gently. "We have had a good run, have we not?" "The best," she agreed. They spent that day like so many others, finding joy in the simple rhythms of life. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, they sat on the porch and watched the aspens shimmer in the fading light. "I would not change a single thing," Prudence said quietly. "Neither would I. Well, maybe I would have found you sooner. Given us more time. We had enough time. We filled it well." Isaac pulled her close, and they sat together as darkness fell and stars emerged overhead. The mountains stood silent and eternal around them, witnesses to their love story. The years continued, each one precious. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1919, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The gathering was enormous, the cabin overflowing with family. "Look at what we made," Prudence said to Isaac as they surveyed the crowd. "Look at what you made," he corrected. "You were the one who brought life and love into this place. We did it together. We did everything together." That winter was harsh, and both of them felt their age more keenly. But they faced it as they had faced everything else together, with strength and grace and unwavering love. One morning in early December, Prudence woke to find Isaac still sleeping beside her, his breathing deep and even. She watched him for a moment, this man who had been her salvation and her strength, her partner and her love. His face was lined now, his hair white, but to her he was still the powerful mountain man who had shown her mercy when she needed it most. She thought about all the mornings they had shared, thousands upon thousands of them, each one precious, each one a gift. He had kept his promise, reminding her every single day that she mattered, that she was loved, that her existence had value. She had spent 40 years beside this man, and if given the choice, she would spend 40 more. Isaac stirred, opening his eyes to find her watching him. His face broke into a smile, the same smile that had captured her heart so long ago. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning, my love," she replied, leaning down to kiss him. And as they rose to face another day together, Prudence sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the chance encounter in the wilderness, for the man who had seen her worth when she could not, for the life they had built together, brick by brick, day by day, morning by morning. She had never been told she mattered before Isaac Brennan, but he had spent 40 years showing her it was true, and that made all the difference. They spent Christmas of 1919 surrounded by their ever-growing family. The cabin, expanded multiple times over the years, still barely contained everyone. 3 generations gathered, and the sound of children's laughter filled every corner. Isaac sat in his chair by the fire, a great-grandchild on his knee, telling stories about the old days. Prudence watched from across the room, her heart full. This was the legacy of their love, not just children and grandchildren, but a family that knew how to care for each other, how to value each person, how to build lives founded on love rather than fear. Later that night, after everyone had settled down, she and Isaac lay in bed together. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what? For everything. For seeing me, for loving me, for building this life with me, for reminding me every morning that I matter." Isaac turned to face her, his hand finding hers under the quilts. "It was my honor and my privilege. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Prudence Brennan. My wife, my partner, my love. And you are mine, forever and always." They drifted off to sleep, hands clasped together, hearts beating in tandem. Outside, snow fell softly on the mountains, blanketing the world in white. Inside the cabin, warmth and love held strong against the cold. The new decade brought changes. The world was shifting, becoming more modern, more connected. But in their mountain sanctuary, Isaac and Prudence held fast to the values that had sustained them: love, respect, partnership, family. In 1922, they celebrated their 43rd anniversary quietly, just the two of them. Thomas had offered to arrange a party, but they had declined, preferring intimate time together. 43 years, Prudence marveled. "We have been together longer than I lived without you." "Best 43 years of my life," Isaac said, echoing words he had spoken many times before. They spent the day reminiscing, pulling out old memories like treasured possessions. They laughed about early mistakes, like the time Prudence had accidentally put salt instead of sugar in a pie, or when Isaac had nearly chopped through his boot while showing off his wood-cutting skills. They cried together, remembering harder times, illnesses, injuries, the normal sorrows that come with a long life. But mostly, they celebrated. They celebrated the choice to love, the commitment to stay, the decision to build something beautiful together. As 1923 dawned, Isaac's health began to decline more noticeably. He moved slower, tired more easily. Prudence watched with concern but also with acceptance. They were both in their mid-60s now, and life could not go on forever. In the spring of that year, Isaac had a bad fall while working outside. He broke his hip, and the injury left him largely confined to the cabin. Prudence became his caretaker, just as he had once been hers in different ways. "I hate being useless," he grumbled one day. "You are not useless. You are healing. There is a difference. I should be taking care of you." Prudence sat beside him and took his hand. "We take care of each other. That is what marriage is. You carried me when I needed it. Now I carry you. That is how this works." He smiled at her, love shining in his eyes. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky. We found each other when we needed it most." Isaac recovered somewhat, but he never regained his full strength. He accepted this with grace, focusing instead on the time he had left. He spent hours with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on wisdom and stories. He worked with James on a memoir of his life in the mountains, wanting to leave something behind for future generations. And every morning, no matter how much pain he was in, he woke and turned to Prudence. "Good morning, beautiful," he would say. "Good morning, my love," she would reply. And in those simple exchanges, 45 years of love and devotion were distilled into their purest form. In the autumn of 1924, as the aspens turned gold once more, Isaac's health took a turn for the worse. The family gathered, understanding without being told that this might be the last time. Prudence never left his side. She held his hand, stroked his white hair, whispered all the things that mattered. "I love you. You were everything to me. You showed me what love really means. You saved me." "You saved me too," Isaac whispered back, his voice weak. "You gave my life meaning. You are my heart, Prudence. Always were, always will be." Their children gathered around the bed, Thomas with his quiet strength, Sarah with her medical knowledge tempered by daughterly grief, James with his poet's heart breaking. Grandchildren crowded the cabin, everyone wanting to say goodbye to the man who had been the foundation of their family. But Isaac's eyes stayed on Prudence. After 45 years, she was still the center of his world. "Do not be sad," he told her. "We had a beautiful life, more than most people ever get." "I know," she said through her tears, "but I am not ready to let you go. You will never have to let me go. I will always be with you. In every sunrise over the mountains, in every rustle of the aspens, in every moment of love this family shares. I will be there." He passed quietly in his sleep that night, Prudence beside him as she had been for 45 years. She held his hand as he took his last breath, and though grief threatened to overwhelm her, she also felt grateful. Grateful for every day, every morning, every moment they had shared. The funeral was held at the cabin, with half the county in attendance. Isaac Brennan had been respected and loved by everyone who knew him. They buried him in a spot overlooking the valley, where he could watch over the mountains he had loved. Prudence stood at the grave, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and spoke the words she needed to say. "He was the best man I ever knew. He showed me what love means, what strength looks like, what it means to matter. He kept his promise. He reminded me every single day that I was valuable, that I was loved, that my life had meaning. And because of him, I will face whatever comes next with courage. Because he taught me how." The months after Isaac's death were hard. The cabin felt empty without him, too quiet. Prudence grieved deeply, but she also carried forward the strength he had helped her build. She was not the broken woman who had stumbled into the mountains 46 years ago. She was strong, capable, surrounded by family, secure in her worth. Thomas wanted her to move in with him and Catherine, but Prudence refused. "This is my home. This is where Isaac and I built our life. I am not leaving it." She stayed in the mountain cabin, though her children visited frequently. She tended the grave, kept the home running, and began working with James on adding her own memories to Isaac's memoir. "People should know our story," she told her son. "They should know that love can heal, that kindness matters, that one person can change another person's entire life." James wrote it all down, the story of a desperate woman and a mountain man, of love growing in the wilderness, of a family built on respect and devotion. When it was published in 1926, it touched hearts across the country. Letters poured in from women who saw themselves in Prudence's story, from men who wanted to be like Isaac. Prudence read every letter, grateful that their love could help others. She lived for 6 more years after Isaac's death. Good years, full of family and purpose. She watched her great-grandchildren grow, saw Sarah's daughter become a doctor, celebrated Thomas's 50th birthday, attended James's readings. And every morning when she woke alone in the bed she had shared with Isaac for so many years, she would smile and whisper, "Good morning, my love. I remember that I matter, that I am loved, that our life together was precious. You kept your promise, every single day." On a crisp October morning in 1930, Prudence Jensen Brennan passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 73 years old. They buried her beside Isaac, reuniting the two people who had been inseparable in life. At her funeral, Thomas spoke for the family. "Our mother taught us that love is a choice you make every day. That strength comes from kindness, not cruelty. That every person has value, has worth, has the right to be treated with dignity. She and our father showed us what a real partnership looks like: two people choosing each other, supporting each other, building something beautiful together. They gave us a foundation of love that will carry forward for generations. And it did. The Brennan family grew and spread, but they always remembered the story of Isaac and Prudence. They told it to their children, who told it to theirs. The mountain cabin was maintained by the family, eventually turned into a small museum celebrating the couple who had built such an extraordinary life in the Colorado wilderness. Visitors would come and stand in the cabin, imagining the love that had filled those rooms. They would read the letters Isaac and Prudence had written to each other, see the photographs of their growing family, and understand that real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that changes lives, is built on a foundation of respect, kindness, and daily commitment. The story of Prudence and Isaac became legend in Aspen and the surrounding areas. A woman who had been told she was worthless, and a man who had shown her the truth. A love story that began with mercy and grew into something profound. A partnership that lasted 45 years and created a legacy that would endure far longer. And somewhere in the mountains of Colorado, in the rustle of golden aspens and the rush of cold streams, in the peace of morning light breaking over snow-capped peaks, their love story continues. A reminder that one person can change another's life. That kindness matters. That love, real love, has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Prudence had never been told she mattered before Isaac Brennan, but he had reminded her every morning when she woke beside him. And that simple act of daily devotion had transformed two lives, built a family, and created a love story for the ages. In the end, that was everything. That was more than enough. That was perfect.